Welcome.
Welcome to the Everything Podcast. In this episode, I'm going to be looking at the Big Finish news for July and August 2024. We're up to the 17th of July 2024 now, which is when Doctor Who, the novel adaptation's Goth Opera was released. So let's have a look at the press release for it. A Night at the Goth Opera. From Manchester to Gallifrey, vampires menace the Fifth Doctor, Tegan and Nyssa, in a full-cast audio drama adaptation of Paul Cornell's 1994 novel Goth Opera, released today. A fan favourite from the Virgin Missing Adventures range, Goth Opera has now been adapted by Elizabeth Miles into a 3-part audio play from even Big Finish Productions. Peter Davison stars as the Doctor, alongside Janet Fielding as Tegan and Sarah Sutton as Nyssa. The story sees the Doctor and his companions encountering vampires who live among us on Earth, a problem made worse by a Time Lady intent on bringing forth an army of bloodsuckers and Nyssa receiving an unfortunate bite. The cast of Goth Opera also includes Richard Armitage, who you may recognise from The Hobbit and Fool Me Once, who reads the prologue as Rassilon, plus Natalie Gomez, who you may know from Titans and Jekyll and Hyde as villainous Time Lady Ruath, and Mika Balfa, who you may know from The Gold and the Bill as Yarvin, the supposed vampire messiah. Here's a synopsis. Manchester, 1993, the Time Lady Ruath, an old friend of the Doctor's, arrives on the planet to inform Earth's vampires that the arrival of their legendary messiah is imminent. His rising will herald an age of endless night where the undead reign supreme. All that is needed is the blood of a Time Lord. In Tasmania, the Doctor, Tegan and Nyssa are enjoying the sun and plenty of cricket when they are attacked by by vampires. They escape unscathed except for Nyssa, who suffers 2 small puncture wounds to her neck. Compelled by her attacker to remain silent, she can tell no one what she's turning into. Why is Ruath so determined to see the descendants of the great vampire rise to power? If only the Doctor knew the truth, she's certain he would turn to her side and help to secure the future of vampire kind, no matter how much humanity must suffer. Peter Davison said, "It's a fun story and the Doctor has a history of fighting vampires, which I was never aware of. Vampires and his strange love of tea are the 2 things the Doctor has to cope with in this story." Sarah Sutton said, "It's a very good story for Nyssa. The idea of Nyssa with fangs is quite something. I remember when I first saw the cover for this novel, when it was put in front of me at the silent convention, I was shocked at the amount of blood on Nyssa's costume, so I made a complaint about it, and the next time I saw it, they'd reduced the amount of blood." Janet Fielding added, "It's a core cover story, very good plot, it's very action-packed, the sense of jeopardy is quite high, and Sarah does very good evil. I'm not looking at her in the same way again." That's all for the press release. Now let's look at Vortex Magazine, which is Big Finish's official free magazine, which releases monthly. Between 2012 and 2016, Big Finish adapted various Doctor Who books from Virgin Publishing's The New Adventures and The Missing Adventures ranges, many by authors who would go on to write for the Doctor on screen when the series returned in 2005. The novel adaptations range includes adventures from original stories written by Rusty Davies, who wrote Damaged Goods, Mark Gatiss, who wrote Nightshade, Paul Cornell, who wrote Love and War, and actually wrote this one, and Gareth Roberts, who wrote The Romance of Crime, The English Way of Death, and The Well-Mannered War. This summer sees the first story from the first book even, from the Missing Adventures range, Goth Opera, written by Paul Cornell, became a 3-part audio drama exactly 30 years since its original publication. The tale features the Fifth Doctor travelling with companions Nyssa and Tegan, and takes place in both Tasmania and Manchester. Peter Davison, Sarah Sutton and Janet Fielding all reprise their regular roles. It's Manchester, 1993. The Time Lady Ruath, an old friend of the Doctor's, arrives on the planet to inform Earth's vampires that the arrival of their legendary messiah is imminent. His rising will herald an age of endless night when the undead reign supreme. All that is needed is the blood of a Time Lord. In Tasmania, the Doctor, Tegan and Nyssa are enjoying the sun and plenty of cricket. When they are attacked by vampires, they escape unscathed except for Nyssa, who suffers 2 small puncture wounds to her neck. Compelled by her attacker to remain silent, she can tell no one what she's turning into. Why is Ruath so determined to see the descendants of the great vampire rise to power? If only the Doctor knew the truth, she's certain he would turn to his side and help secure the future of vampire kind, no matter how much humanity must suffer. Goth Opera has been adapted for audio by writer Elizabeth Miles and is produced and directed by David O'Mahony. Writer Paul, whose new adventure story Love and War has already been adapted by Big Finish, recalls his commission for Goth Opera. Paul says, Peter Darwell Evans, the editor of the New Adventures, told me that they were going to start a new range called The Mystic Adventures and asked if I'd like to be the first to write one, which was a great honour. I've always felt a great affection for the Peter Davison years, so that's where I wanted to start, especially with the cricket angle. I'm a huge cricket fan. The Fifth Doctor was my fan fiction character and the original version of what became Tamarin. Revelation was actually a Fifth Doctor story rather than a 7th. I've always liked the team of the Fifth Doctor, Nyssa and Tegan, which doesn't actually last that long on screen. Goth Opera built on a vampire world created by Terrance Dicks in State of Decay and tidied with Blood Harvest in the New Adventures range. Paul adds, I was struck by the sheer amount of world building Terrance does in State of Decay and the parallels between the Time Lords and vampires. There's the resurrection stuff and the fact that they seem to have been polar opposites in the distant past of the universe, with Rassilon versus the great vampire stuff. That struck me as sheer gold, and mining that gives you so much to play with. Time travel allows you to move a vampire from day into night into day, things like that. And I always wondered if you could kill a Time Lord by putting a stake through both hearts. I think there's far more in common between the two than one might think. The audio adaptation, however, has exercised the content thinking Goth Opera with Blood Harvest, Elizabeth Tells Vortex. When it came to adapting it, I'd already written quite a few new plays for Big Finish, so I felt very confident. Doctor Who Goth Opera about writing an audio script, so I felt very confident about writing there's some words in between which doesn't make sense, that's why I've got these. So I felt very confident about writing an audio script based on an existing novel. I was excited to have something that built on a skill I already had. It wasn't terrifying in the way that so many things are. It was fun to do actually, as I wasn't responsible for the plot, which was already there. But I had to make it work for the different medium, because the story has already been edited, which is what I was getting as my starting point was already very polished. Most of the different stuff had already been done. What I wanted to do was to learn how to turn something that was very visual on the page into something on audio. Obviously, you're limited to dialogue and a soundscape, so learning how to translate that was a new challenge for me. Part of the translation process from prose to audio script meant that some elements had been lost, such as the memorably horrible image of the flying vampire baby. Elizabeth explains, yes, I'm afraid that had to be cut. It was the biggest disappointment to do the adaptation, but I couldn't figure out an effective way to get the flying baby on audio without it sounding like exposition. There are several crucial scenes in the book where the baby was there. You could include it in a comic book, you could include it in a book, you could have it on film, but you just can't do it on audio. The closest I got to an idea I might find acceptable was Nyssa telepathically being in contact with the baby, which meant she could explain things more, but it didn't work. In the end, I felt like I could do the same information from a vampire who could talk to her. It's very frustrating and annoying, disappointing because it's such a great image. Annoyingly disappointing because it's such a great image. It's one of the most memorable moments in the book, but it was a difficult decision to let it go. The major change that listeners will notice is cutting the section on Gallifrey with Romana, which connected Goth Opera much more heavily to Blood Harvest. It was easy enough to do though, as you could get the information of what happened on Gallifrey from other characters. I don't feel bad about that one because you're not only streamlining it, you're also not suddenly shifting from England and Australia and then to Gallifrey and having to explain events from Blood Harvest. That's not welcoming to someone who's never heard of Goth Opera before. There is far more in the book that you could fit into 3 hours of audio, so in adapting you always have to cut stuff. Losing Gallifrey and Romana made narrative sense. Listeners will be delighted to know that other major characters from the original book have been retained, Elizabeth explains. Regarding the other characters, I think everyone is in there. I don't think the people who remember the book will notice anyone has gone apart from Romana. I was very pleasing to be able to do. It was very pleasing to be able to do that and to keep most of the existing characters. There are certain other bits which could have been cut, but I love them too much. There is some very cool stuff on the moon, which technically speaking has very little to do with the plot. I just thought it would be really neat and wanted to keep it in, so hopefully that will still be in there when it's edited. You always know when things can go over and some scenes will be slightly cut down. Elizabeth is a good friend and podcast partner of Paul Cornell. Paul believes that the audio script is titled up his 1994 novel, he explains. When I look back at the shapes and some of my new adventures with some of them, I would like to do another draft. Elizabeth has actually improved the shape of Goth Opera quite a lot, going through it and thinking this doesn't quite work and this would make more of an impact like that. Subsequent versions of books often improve on the original. I think about the audios of Love and War and Goth Opera and now love them more. And definitely with the TV version of Human Nature, I read Elizabeth's audio script with delight. Chairman J.C.K. Gowrie had asked if Big Finish could release Goth Opera and I said, well, obviously I'd love Elizabeth to adapt it because we're podcast partners and she's one of Big Finish's key writers. I knew that she'd given an understanding of my work, but also some distance from it. She's always given me the respect of being critical about some of it, and that's really important to me, that she's not going to just provide a homage. She would do her own thing with it, and that's what I would seek from anybody who adapts my work. I read the first draft even, and had where am I up to? And that's what she would seek from anyone who's adapted my work. Sorry, I read the first draft and had a few notes, but there was nothing huge. Did Elizabeth feel any pressure in adapting Paul's work? She says it's a very faithful adaptation. It's limited by certain things. Very faithful adaptation that's limited by certain things that just don't work on audio and the time frame we've got to work with. I did make the odd tweak, but apart from taking stuff out and streaming it down to basically make it smoother, very little has changed. There were one or two tiny bits of characterization I adjusted based on very clear things from the TV series. One of these, which do mentionable, was from the Five Doctors, where Tegan at one point is asked to get everyone tea or coffee and her reaction is not positive. In Paul's novel, Tegan is asked to make tea by the Doctor 3 times and she agrees 3 times, so I thought that was very out of character. The difference I have made here include Tegan volunteering to make tea or coffee, but we also have the Doctor offering to make them too, and Paul was happy with these changes. Of course, I didn't want him to hate my adaptation, obviously that would be terrible. It's been a couple of years now since I actually wrote it, so looking back at it now, it's very much those rose-tinted glasses, but I remember it was easier to do than I expected, and I had a great time working on it. There was no stress or panic. Elizabeth was delighted with the fan reaction when Goth Opera was announced. She explains the response to the announcement even was great. It's still a popular. Where am I up to? Reaction was announced. She explains the response to the announcement was great. It's still a popular adventure. a popular adventure and well regarded. A lot of people have great memories from reading it. I thought that before, but it became more pointed after it was announced. Paul has been very reassuring. He didn't read any of the script as I was writing it, although I would occasionally ask him questions. I did ask him some cricket questions. I did ask him some cricket questions, and he'd never be happier to have a conversation with me. Paul reading the script and telling me he was happy with it was a great relief. It was a little nerve-wracking to do, but everything was fine. Joining Peter Davison, Sarah Sutton and Janet Fielding in the cast are Natalie Gummead, known for Jekyll and Hyde, and Mika Belfour, known for The Gold. Richard Armitage also reprised his role as Rassilon to read the story's prologue. Paul adds, Sarah finally gets to be Vampire Nyssa, which is something I've wanted to hear for the longest time. It's such a powerful image because it really gives Nyssa a new dimension, and I hope it gave Sarah some stuff to do that lets her enjoy a different playing field for a while. And it's very interesting that back in the day I was a fairly militant atheist. I wrote a very negative stereotype of an novelist. These days I'm a person of faith and still don't feel tremendously fond of a certain brand of evangelism. I think this is a much more nuanced take to that, and it's not as nasty as it was before. There was a certain cruelty to what has gone in this audio version, which had gone in this audio version, although it still packs points in all the right places. Producer David O'Mahony concludes, Goth Opera has got everything: vampires, superpowers, blood, guts and gore, and of course Peter Davison's Doctor, along with Tegan and Nyssa. It's also set in and around Manchester, which gave us a lovely opportunity to bring in young and exciting modern actors. Elizabeth has brilliantly adapted Paul's novel, and with incredible voice cast, including the wonderful Richard Armitage giving us a Rassilon prologue. It's vampiric romp through the universe not to be missed. Richard is actually a neighbour of mine, but his section was recorded before the rest of the production by Scott Honkum. I'm gutted I didn't get to work with him on this one. And that's it for the press release, but here's the trailer for Doctor Who novel adaptations Goth Opera.
I wouldn't mind a taste of Morrissey. What do you think his blood would taste like?
Milk it, love.
From Big Finish Productions, Doctor Who Goth Opera.
You may call me Ruath. I am a Time Lord of Gallifrey. The ring I wear shows the great seal of Rassilon. I know the secrets of your past, and I know the great destiny that awaits you.
You're flying. What are you?
You've got an interesting mind. You're not human, are you?
How do you know? No, get away from me! I don't want to die.
Not up to me. Sorry.
Nyssa? You okay?
Tegan!
Hang on!
Tegan, what's going on?
Are you certain you're all right?
I just need to rest.
It's Nyssa you should worry about.
I am worrying.
Yes, I know that face.
What face?
The I'm missing something important face.
Am I? Maybe I am.
They called themselves the Great Vampires. To this day, the very mention of their name strikes fear in the heart of every true Gallifreyan.
I am Yavin, Lord of the House of Yar, father of all the Earth's undead. Kneel before me.
The power of the Time Lords in your veins. All of time and space is yours to explore and to conquer.
Together, we shall be Queen and King of the Night. We will unite the humans and the Time Lords in the great communion of the undead. Together, nothing will be beyond our reach.
Big Finish. For the love of stories.
That was the trailer for the novel adaptations Goth Opera, which is actually where I'm leaving this episode. But the first thing I'll be talking about in the next episode will be the Paternoster Gang, No Place Like Home. So let me know what you thought of Goth Opera if you listened to it, which I've also reviewed. So go check that out. But yes, let me know what you thought about Goth Opera if you've listened to it as well. But put your suggestions of anything you want me to cover in the comments below as well. And remember, you can also like, comment and subscribe. And that's it for this episode of the Everything Podcast. Goodbye.